Pencils down, the test is over. And admittedly, I got some of the answers wrong on this one.
Yeah, I'm watching the rise, and I wouldn't say I'm shocked because I'm hardly surprised. This one's for the ride, this one's for who knew I'd make it, just needed some time. This one's for my wife, could have left 1,000 times just so by my side. This one's for the grind, I knew it would happen, just had the strength in my mind. To the videos, they thought I was a black guy. It's hard to get over. I'm foreigner in the sport, but I'm fully devoted. I don't take it for granted that the door's been open. I knew I was different. I knew I was chosen.
First, let me just say that pencils down line, I have to attribute that to Joel Godet. He used that during the European semifinals this weekend, but the European semifinals are over, and so is the Asia semifinal, and we now have our games field complete. I will go into the entire games field likely in future videos. This video is going to focus on week 3 of semifinals, which has come to an end, and we have 11 men, 11 women, 10 teams from Europe going to the games. So let's talk a little bit about who's going and who's not going. And we will start on the women's side because we had a lot of things going on the women's side, and a couple of people we thought were going to be at the games who we won't be seeing on the field in Madison this year. So let's start with the top of the leaderboard, and that is Gabby Magala. And she was near the top of the leaderboard and then on top of it for a lot of the weekend. She came out in day 1 and had 2 very good finishes, a 3rd and a 14th. Those are both solid finishes on 2 very different tests. And she just looked like she was confident in herself all weekend and looked a little bit like a different athlete. We've seen her be fairly competitive in her career in the open division and do well at the games, top 10 finishes, but she was never really leading from the front. And during this competition, she spent a lot of it leading from the front. She beat Annie Thorsdottir out on Linda, day 2, first event. It was a photo finish.
It's a chip time! Gabby Magala, 12:08.95. Annie Thorsdottir, 12:08.97. What a race!
And after that, I believe she never relinquished the top of the podium. And her finishes the rest of the weekend were extremely solid. She had a first in workout 3, that was Linda, then a 3rd, 2nd, 4th, 4th. She looked fantastic. The changes that she's made, working with Christoph Horvath, her boyfriend as her coach, Laura Horvath's brother, it seems to be working, and she seems to be in a very good place because she was confident, she looked great, she performed great, and I'm very excited to see her in Madison. And although I don't think many people are going to be calling for her to be the fittest on earth, I do feel like she's now a contender for the podium and someone you have to look at for the podium, and certainly the top 10 because she's been there before and she looked great at semis. You gotta believe that she's gonna have a top 10 performance again and possibly podium at the games. In second, Annie Thorsdottir, and I actually had her in second in my prediction, and that is exactly where she ended up. I did have her second to Laura Horvath, who we'll get to in a second, but she was very consistent all weekend as well. She was in first after day 1. She had a 7th and 8th place finish on the first 2 events. And then she had a 2nd, 5th, 8th, 2nd, 7th. She was always in the top 10 in every single event. That's consistency. That's what we've seen from Annie over the past 12 years or so. I mean, I believe she did miss a year for a back injury in there, but, and a pregnancy. She also had a pregnancy, but this will be her 12th CrossFit Games. And she has a legitimate shot of winning the games this year with the field that we have going. And she could win the games for the first time in 2011 and then win it again in 2023. which would be insane, but is very much a possibility. Even she seems a little bit surprised by her continuous success in CrossFit.
I honestly don't understand how I'm still here. I thought I could do this sport for like 3-4 years, and I always do it 1 year at a time, and somehow I'm still here, and sometimes I'm like, how? So obviously this is just a passion. I love training, and then competing. I don't always love it. I get really nervous, you guys. But as soon as I walk out and I hear my people in the crowd and like I feel you, then I'm like, this is sick. I get to do this.
But she also seems to love it, and she loves inspiring people, and she seems to be doing this for her family now and to inspire her daughter, Freya. So I think that she has a really good mentality, and she's very focused training now. She's not doing as much volume. She is, one, a mother, and two, older than she was in 2011 when she started, although she may be doing more volume than she was doing, well, 2009 was actually her first games, but she may be doing more volume now than 2009, but probably less than she was doing in the middle of all that. And she is focused training over volume training. I think it's working for her. I mean, consistent top 10 finishes. This was a pretty competitive field. The bottom of the European women are probably not women we're gonna see in the top 20. But the top of the European women, where she finished on the podium, those women that she was competing around, the ones that were right in her vicinity, those are all women we can see podium at the games. And we have 2 women here, maybe even 3, who have legitimate shots at winning the CrossFit Games this year. So this is a very challenging European field, and Annie came in second. That's a dangerous Annie. And keep an eye on her for the games. Keep her in your running for the fittest on earth in 2023, because she still is amazing. And she is a face that is on the Mount Rushmore of CrossFit, in my opinion. In third, we have Laura Horvath. I thought she could win this semifinal. She didn't. Did she look bad? Definitely not. Gabby just looked fantastic this weekend, and she could have just been having a great weekend in training. Maybe on a different weekend, Laura could have beat her, but Laura still looked very good. Let's just discuss her finishes real quick. So she had a 23rd in event 1, and that was a little bit of a hole, but things got better. She went on to have a 4th, a 2nd, then she had an 18th in workout 5, but that workout 5 is somewhat similar to workout 1 in the sense that running was a large component of it, and maybe not her best thing. I mean, in workout 5, that was the 12 snatches into 800 meters for time. Running was the primary part of that workout. And then event 1 was the sled pulls with the different machines, bike, run, ski. And then on day 3, she did what she had to do to get on the podium. She did pretty much what she did at the games this past year. And that is, she went out and won event 6 and 7. And she looked fantastic in event 7. I thought at first that Annie may have had her on the first round. And Gabby was also right there too. Then Laura just created separation. And she said she loved those movements, and I believe it. And she also said that she's gonna do everything in her power to win the games. That's a little bit of my interpretation, but she said to accomplish her goal, which I'm pretty sure is to win the games.
I have my goal. I know what I want. I know how I want the season to end, and I'm gonna do everything in my power to finish where I would like to finish.
Now, Laura also took the opportunity to thank the fans, and her speech thanking the fans, the second I saw it, I made sure to grab it for this video, because I thought the way she spoke to the fans was something I just loved. I thought it was so genuine and sincere, and something that I think we all really enjoyed hearing. So let's hear it again.
You guys really are the sport, so thank you so much for letting us and everybody in the field do what they love.
Now, although fourth on the women's side is only 21 points behind the podium, I'm just being honest. I think these three women we had on the podium are by far the best. And then everyone else is just sort of, I mean, they're very good. I think there are women here that can definitely be in the top 15 of the games. Maybe top 10, but likely top 15. But I just feel like these three that we just discussed extensively are the three that you're gonna really have your eyes on in Madison. The rest of these people are just sort of a notch below. So running through these, in fourth, we have Emma Tall. In fifth, we have Karen Freyova. In sixth, Matilda Garns. In seventh, Manan Angonese, who will be making her first appearance at the CrossFit Games. In eighth, we have another rookie in Ella Wunger. In ninth, Alicia Fuliano will be making her second appearance at the Games. In 10th, we have Emma McQuaid, and she looked a little bit emotional. I think that she had a weekend that she wasn't expecting. She didn't do quite as well as she had hoped, and you could tell she was relieved to make it. And then in 11th, we have Rebecca Vidison, who is another rookie and looked very happy competing today. I'll be interested to see how she does at the Games. She beat out Jacqueline Dahlstrom, who was in 12th. And there was something interesting that happened. When Jacqueline and Rebecca were waiting to find out who was in 11th, the final position to go to the Games, they took this two-shot of them, which I thought was just a little bit weird. I know that's something they do a lot. They will show the person who is in the final qualifying position and the person who is the first one out. And then you'll get to see the emotions when they reveal the results. The thing I thought was weird this time was we knew. There was just not a question of who it was. Rebecca was ahead of Jacqueline going into event 7. And then they did event 7 next to each other, and Rebecca came in front of Jacqueline. Like, math tells you there was no way that if it was between these two, that Jacqueline could have beaten her, seeing as she did it. We saw her not beat her. So I thought it was weird because there was no suspense to it, and Jacqueline handled it like a pro and just stood there, but there was no way she didn't know. She was there, like we were. But on the subject of Jacqueline Dahlstrom, it is disappointing to see that she won't be going back to the CrossFit Games after she had that iconic moment with the sandbag last year. It's just sad to see her season ending short, but she didn't have a great weekend. She had a couple pretty poor finishes. She had a 28th on event 1, a 20th on event 4, and then she had a 23rd on event 5. And she really didn't have many great finishes. The only really good one she had was a 5th in the final event. And it wasn't enough because the woman who beat her had a 2nd on that event. So it was a disappointing weekend for Jacqueline. I know I saw her Instagram post and she said there were some things that were out of her control and she just couldn't capitalize on the things that were in her control to get into a position to qualify. And she got close being in 12th, but really if you look at the points, it wasn't that close. She was still 15 points back, but it's going to be sad not to see her there this year. Hopefully she can use this and bounce back in 2024. So going down the list for some other names that didn't qualify, and these are some of the places where I got things wrong when I was doing my predictions. Thuri Helgadottir finished in 15th, and While I did predict her to make the field, I had her at the bottom of my list, even though I didn't put it in order. I did say that I thought she'd be near the cut line. She was on the wrong side of it. These tests have seemed to favor a bigger, stronger athlete. That's not Thury, and it never will be. She is listed as 5'4" and less than 130 pounds. She's just not a big athlete. And she did actually do fairly well on the snatch. She still finished in the top third. She did not do good on that sled pull event and was just in a hole from the start, the 52nd place finish on the first event, and just couldn't quite do enough. And then in 19th, we have Sara Sigmundsdottir, and her day 3 was hard to watch. She did come into day 3 outside of a qualifying position, but she was close, and there was a real possibility she could do what it took to make it into the top 11, and it was bad. She did not do well in the final day. She got a 56th place finish on event 6, and she just couldn't get a rope climb. And it was sad to watch her struggling and sliding down that rope. And she posted on Instagram as well, saying that she had tested that workout out and she had finished it. I think she had sub 12, which would have been a great finish for her and may have put her into a qualifying position if that was the score she had gotten. But she didn't even get off the rope climbs. And it was sad to see, and then she really tried to go for it on the final event, and then she ended up struggling to hold on to the toes to bar in the last event and sort of blew up there and had a mediocre finish on that workout as well. I believe she is working with Justin Kotler now at Underdogs, and he seems to say that she's been through a lot, and maybe that has something to do with how she performed. Maybe she still has a chance of making it back to the games, but it just hasn't looked great the last 2 years, and it's unfortunate to see. She's a crowd favorite and was once very, very competitive and a favorite to win the games. And it's just not there right now. But to wrap up with the women, we do have 3 legitimate women in this field who are all podium contenders. And I think, and there is like this off chance that the 3 women who are on the podium at this semifinal could be the same 3 women on the podium at the games. I do feel that's a little bit unlikely, but I don't feel it's out of the realm of possibilities. We'll see. It'll be exciting to watch all 3 of the podium women, Annie, Gabby, and Laura, at the games this year. So now let's go over to the men's side, which I was also wrong about some things and had some surprises. In first, we have Lazar Dukic, and I thought he was gonna do well. I thought he was likely to be on the podium. I did not think he was going to win, and certainly did not think he was going to win by so many points, by more than 50 points over the second place athlete. So Lazar looking great, and he talked a little bit about how his season didn't start the way he wanted to, but maybe it's on the up.
It's pretty amazing, and I didn't start my year on the right note or the season, and it feels good to gain that confidence back coming games time, and pretty happy.
And then in second, we have Hendrik Haapalainen, and he looked just solid all weekend with very consistent finishes. He had a 3rd, an 8th, 11th, 9th, 10th, 8th, 3rd. So all finishes with the lowest being 11th. That's a pretty solid weekend. I don't know if I'm going to say he's going to be a top 10 finisher at the games. I would definitely look at Lazar to possibly do that. but he had a very good weekend. And third, we had Moritz Fiebig, and he was sort of the hometown kid this weekend, being from Germany, looking to make a repeat appearance at the CrossFit Games, his second appearance. And he was looking pretty good from the start, but did have a little bit of a slip on day 3, but at that point, he was pretty solidly going to make it to the games. It was just a matter of where he finished. And he certainly could have been second if he didn't have a 36th finish on workout 6, a lower half finish. But because the field is so large, we've seen people have these poor finishes and still make it to the games. And for Moritz, he still finished on the podium. And the biggest surprise on the men's side is actually the 4th place finisher, and that is Jelle Hoste. And he wasn't even on my radar before this event, and he finished in 4th. He just had some fantastic events, and then he had some not so great events, but he literally won events, so it all balanced out. And he's gonna be an interesting athlete to watch at the games because he is 6'2", 6'3", 190 centimeters, so that's a tall guy. And 98 kilos, about 215 pounds. He is a big athlete, kind of like a Brent Fikowski, but he's not as good at Brent Fikowski. He's not as well-rounded. He could and did beat Brent Fikowski in some of these tests. He set a record on the 12 snatches into the 800-meter run. So he beat Fikowski, and Fikowski didn't have the best score in that event. So he has some home run hitter events, but his size makes him an outlier, and I don't think he's shored up those holes in a way Brent Fikowski has, who has a similar size as him. But very impressive to see Jelle get 3 first-place finishes, event 1, event 5, and then in event 7 to take home the weekend. I think we were all very impressed, especially at that event 7. Event 1 and event 5 are sort of similar. We talked about how Jacqueline Dahlstrom didn't do well in either of those, and they were similar. Same thing here. Jelle did great in both of those, and they were kind of similar because the sled at this semifinal was not nearly as much of a factor as it was at North America East or North America West. In 5th, Joona Koski, and there was a little bit of a worry that he was having some trouble with his shoulder after event 2, which he actually did very well on. I mean, he won it. But he was touching his pec, doing this kind of stuff, and then he was taped up. But turns out it was fine. He won that event and then ended up finishing in 5th, which is a solid weekend. And if I'm remembering correctly, he said he still believes that he has the ability to win the CrossFit Games. And he looked a little bit more well-rounded this weekend than just winning, you know, the swim event, seeing as there isn't one. And that's sort of what he's known for doing in Madison. So we'll see how he looks come August. In 6th, Uldis Upinek. In 7th, David Sharunk. In 8th, we have to talk about this guy, Bjorkvin Karl Gudmundsson. My pick, and a lot of people's pick, to win this semifinal, finishing in 8th. That's not what many of us expected. He didn't look his best this weekend. He had a 2 25th place finishes and a 16th, but he qualified. And listening to him speak after the event, he does believe he's just getting fitter, even though this will be his 10th CrossFit Games, and he's been in this for a while.
I'm getting fucking old, but I don't feel like I'm old.
Have we seen the best of you yet?
I'm pretty positive that you haven't seen the best of me yet, because I feel much better now at 30 than I felt at 20.
In 9th, we have Bronislaw Olenkovic. In 10th, Mikhail Wisłowski. And in 11th, Fabian Benito. And this was an 11th and 12th that, at least for Fabian, he seemed to be relieved, surprised that he had done enough. He dropped the bag on his final sandbag carry, and I could definitely see how he was worried that he lost it there. But he was actually 16 points ahead of the 12th place person and did enough to make the games, punch his first ticket to the CrossFit Games. And it was awesome to see him, just the emotion that he felt when he heard his name. It was awesome. And it's what these semifinals are about, watching these people who get to punch their ticket to their first CrossFit Games, or just make it to the games when they maybe weren't expecting it. This is probably one of the hardest parts of their season, because quarterfinals, a lot of these athletes that are pushing for the games, they know they're gonna get through that. Open, obviously, I mean, they definitely know they're gonna get through that. And for some athletes, the games is just like, they're not necessarily just happy to be there, but there's a certain amount of relief because you made it. And regardless of what happens, you are a games athlete. But this semifinals and getting to the games, that is just a emotional trip, and you could see it on Fabian's face. And he had been in the last chance qualifier twice before, so I imagine it would have been devastating to have dropped that bag and lost his spot. But he did drop the bag, he didn't lose his spot. We'll take a look at the teams next, because the teams were actually surprising too. And another place that I got something a little wrong. I had No Shortcuts CrossFit in second, and they were in first, and they looked great all weekend. This is Andre Houdet's team, and while he had his team qualify that he's on, his training program also qualified 3 individuals, and those are Jelle Hoste, Manan Engenes, and Rebecca Vidison. So a lot of interesting athletes, couple surprising ones, and Andre Houdet was responsible for part of that. In some ways, getting those athletes there, and also surprising us with No Shortcuts CrossFit. I don't think we were surprised to see No Shortcuts in the top 3, but their dominating performance, a little bit surprising. If you actually look at the scores, they only won by 12 points, but the thing is, they just looked good all weekend. And the team that finished in second, CrossFit Oslo Navy Blue, they're the team I had picked to finish in first because they finished second at the games last year. But they were not having a great weekend. They did not look great after event 1 with a 12th place finish. Not awful, but Navy Oslo Blue is a team that we expect to dominate most of the time. And they just did not look like themselves. Turns out one of their athletes wasn't doing very well, wasn't feeling well, and it did show a little bit on the competition floor.
Nico's been feeling sick over the last week, and I think he really felt it today. And when one guy suffers, it drags the entire team down. But we know that this 6 events, we just have to place top 10, so that's the goal. That
team is going to be coached by Kristen Holte this year, so it will be interesting to see if she makes it out to the games. Holte is pregnant right now, or I mean, maybe not. The last thing she posted on her Instagram as of my recording of this video was on May 24th, and it was that she is 41 weeks pregnant and waiting for her baby to come. And that baby is probably here, would be my guess. Just hasn't announced it yet. So we will see if she makes it to Madison after having a baby so recently, but she's coaching CrossFit Oslo Navy Blue. And in third is CrossFit Walleye Athlete. I had them in third. They are a team that came together to go to the games. Mia Hesketh is one of the athletes on that team, and she is a very, very good one. They also have Camilla Salmonson Hellman on their roster as the alternate, I believe. It will be interesting to see if she stays there. I would imagine she would, because the other woman on the team has obviously contributed to getting them to the games, but Camilla didn't qualify herself for the games, so she wouldn't be eligible to join that team. Just throwing it out there. Now let's just quick go through all the other teams just to get their names said and congratulate them on going to the CrossFit Games. We have CrossFit Oslo Blackout. That is the second Oslo team that'll be going to the game. CrossFit Janaeus, CrossFit Prestanda, CrossFit Porty, CrossFit Trondheim, CrossFit Oslo Naj, I think is how you say that, but probably not. But the third Oslo team. So we have Invictus with 3 teams and Oslo with 3 teams at the games. Pretty impressive gyms. And then CrossFit Rotherham. So congratulations to all those teams. You'll be seeing them competing at the CrossFit Games. Let's take a very quick look over at the Asian leaderboard. So we have 2 women, 2 men, and 2 teams going from Asia. So we will just go over those. And on the women's side, in first place, we have a woman who I did believe was going to punch her ticket, and that is Sara. So she will be going back to the CrossFit Games. In second, we have someone I didn't expect, but actually does have games experience, and that is Shahad Boudebs. And she was on a team in 2021 and an individual in 2019. So she'll be going back to the CrossFit Games. I had Duong Zheng as my other pick to make it, and she ended up tied for 3rd place in points, 10 points behind the 2nd place woman. And over to the men, this was surprisingly my best set of picks for the weekend. I got both of the men correct. In first, we had Arthur Semenov with 612 points, so a fairly dominant weekend for him. He had his worst finish on event 1, 18th place, but we have seen, I believe, over the semifinals that event 1 has the least correlation for the individuals and making it to the games. So took an 18th there, but then he went on with a first, 6th, 2nd. So Arthur Semenov going back to the CrossFit Games. And in second, we have Moretza Sedigat, and he was pretty consistent over the weekend until the final event. So he had a 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, 3rd, 2nd, and then a 12th in the final event, which is likely what put Arthur on top. But awesome weekend for those 2 men, both going to the CrossFit Games. And going over the teams, I got the first team right, and that is CrossFit Fly High Klesknikov team. And they were dominant, first, 2nd, 2nd. And then in second, we had CrossFit Marvel Black. In third was a team that I had going to the games, and that was Stud CrossFit Team Stud. They're gonna have to wait another year or so to make it. So that's it. Those are all the people qualified for the CrossFit Games. So we have all the semifinals done. Little sad that semifinals is over. It's been fun covering these over the last couple of weeks and being down at North America West. But lots more content coming. I plan to go to the CrossFit Games. I will probably do some more with what happened at semifinals, maybe covering some of my favorite moments. If you have any, let me know below. And maybe some other things about what we saw at semifinals. I'm thinking up some ideas for those. And then we will have some of my training vlogs again, and I'm sure a bunch of other stuff. So if you had fun with this video, please subscribe. Lots more to come all the time. Every week we got videos out here. Don't worry, I'm still here even though semifinals is over. All right, appreciate you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.